and I'll crush you like a paper cup.
All right. So with that, we get to end the show with our last thing of the day, our crush or bust of the week, our must starts, our must sits of the week. In other words, Adam, let's go to you. Who are you crushing on headed into week 9?
I think Ladd McConkey is super interesting this week. It kind of piggybacks off of Chase's bust on the other side. I don't know if we're going to get to talk about that given his internet issues. But look, this Cleveland defense is very strong against the run. They had the weird game against the Raiders, which kind of made it look like that was going the wrong direction. But since then, they've been a much better run defense. And going back to last year, they were a strong one, so I tend to believe that is genuinely the case. And with that, I think that you could see a bit of a pivot from the Chargers, and I also think the Browns are showing a lot of emphasis and that they want to throw the football, right? And if the offenses are kind of playing high tempo for Cleveland, that could kind of force the Chargers into a bit of a similar situation. You get a couple turnovers quick from Cleveland, this could certainly go the other direction, kind of to your point in the previous section. But I would not be shocked if this is a higher scoring game than the Chargers have been wanting to play in so far this season. And Ladd McConkey is finally establishing himself, getting all of the snaps at wide receiver, and the targets have gone up the last month. And I think we're just waiting for the passing attempts to just be where they need to be for him to really flourish. And I think this is an opportunity for that. Again, Cleveland's more exploitable in the secondary so far this season than they are against the run. And specifically, you can beat them kind of in the inside, right? Because Ward has gotten a lot better on the outside, but you can still kind of beat them in the interior. So I think Ladd McConkey's in a good spot.
Yeah, I totally agree. Rookie wide receivers establish themselves in the second half of the season. We've seen this pattern, and now Ladd McConkey is establishing himself as a go-to option for Justin Herbert. So I love Ladd McConkey as a start here this week as well. I do have a question coming in from Alex. Should trade Josh Jacobs and Jacoby Myers for Alvin Kamara when he has Lamb, Barkley, Walker, and Adams and Higgins? So would you make that deal, Chris, before we go to you?
I would pull the trigger on that deal. I think Alvin Kamara is about to get back on track. Their offensive line is getting healthy. Derek Carr's coming back. Taysom Hill's getting healthy as well. As long as there's a blocker or two out there, Derek Carr's the quarterback, Alvin Kamara is going to have great value moving forward again.
Yeah, totally agree. The Saints are going to be, their offense is going to be not pathetic. Okay. It's pretty soon it's going to happen. All right. So Chris, who are you loving? Who are you crushing on for week 8?
Well, I talked to you guys about the different receivers. My crush this week is Michael Pittman from the Colts. I like with him with Joe Flacco. ECR number 32, finished top 30 both weeks with Joe Flacco as a quarterback, had 100 yards one of the games, had a touchdown with the other game. Michael Pittman's a guy, as long as he's healthy, the back might be a little bit of an issue, but I expect him to be out there this week, is a guy that I think you talk about the different roles they have on these teams. A lot of the guys are out there to clear out. Michael Pittman's the guy that can be that familiar safety blanket for Joe Flacco, and then in the red zone, Michael Pittman a lot this week in your lineups.
Yeah, so I'll just piggyback off of that and go with my crush of the week too, because guess what? It's his teammate, Josh Downs, who's still sitting at wide receiver 30 in ECR. I thought that was a little bit surprising. I got him up at wide receiver 15. A must top 20 play this week. Flacco takes over in the 2 starts with Flacco. Downs was the wide receiver 13 in weeks 5 and 6. He's had a 26.5% target share, 135 yards and a touchdown in that stretch. And against the Vikings defense, you can throw on this defense, especially over the middle of this defense. They leave holes when they go to blitz as much as they do. In fact, they're giving up the most wide receiver fantasy points on a per game basis and the 3rd most passing yards on a per game basis. And Downs has been the more favored receiver for Flacco. And we'll see if Pittman's getting more healthier from that back issue. So I'm with you on Downs. I will throw out Chase's crush just so you guys know. It was Terry McLaurin. He's got his top 6 play. I mean, he did great the first week against the Giants, but I will say that week we weren't getting the version of the Commanders offense we're getting today. We were getting bubble screen, keep everything within 5 yards. Jaden Daniels, since that week 2 game against the Giants, started to throw the ball down the field more. Terry McLaurin has been on a tear. Scary Terry back in town. I agree with him. He should be a top play. I don't know if I have him in the top 6, but I do agree with him. He should be a start in your lineups this week. All right. Now we got to flip to the other side, right? We got to figure out who do we not want to play, who we might typically have in our lineups. Adam, who's your bust this week?
A guy who I talked about earlier and who I do think is, for season long, I think he's in a really good spot. I think you can kind of rely on him. I just don't think it's this week. I'm worried about the Jacksonville Jaguars offensive line and their matchup this week, and as a result, Brian Thomas Jr., who gets a lot of his value down the field, I am really concerned about him this week. I think if unfortunately, and I hate to say it, if Christian Kirk was healthy, this would be a big week for him, right? Because this is something where they're going to want to get the ball out of Trevor's hands very quickly. Unfortunately, he's gone. They're going to have to make things work otherwise, and maybe they're able to unleash Brian Thomas Jr., on those crossers, maybe a little bit shorter down the field. I just don't know that they're going to have a lot of time to develop things down the field. I know that they haven't been too bad off, since Cam Robinson, I believe, didn't play much week 7 and didn't play at all in week 8 for them. But even then, I'm just concerned about the offensive line, in this matchup.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I'm going to throw a sneaky little play. This is a little bonus sneaky sleeper play based on, because you brought up Christian Kirk, was a great point. I know the Eagles have been the number 1 defense against the tight ends this year. When Christian Kirk doesn't play, Evan Ingram gets double-digit targets. You talk about the quick passing game. I think there might be a heavy volume game here for Evan Ingram. So not that he probably wasn't already in most people's top 12 tight ends. I would imagine he would be, but it's somebody I would definitely want in my lineup as a result of what Adam's saying and why Brian Thomas is a bust this week for him. Chris, who do you not want to play this week, man?
Well, if I have my options, this is a guy I prefer not to play, and I definitely don't think he's as high as ECR has in the top 5, and that's Joe Burrow. Look, I know it's like a sweet matchup versus the Raiders, but Joe Burrow's had one top 5 finish this entire season. They have to reverse the Ravens. We had to throw 5 touchdown passes in order to do that. I think the Raiders are scoring the same amount of points the Ravens were scoring in that game. He's had 3 out of his 8 games he's been outside the top 10. Only 3 times has he been in the top 10 out of 8 weeks. So this guy hasn't been one of the top quarterbacks in general. Last 2 weeks has not been a quarterback 1 option for you. And like I said, I know it looks like a sweet matchup versus the Raiders. That means they can run the ball. Chase Brown, I think Zach Moss will be involved. I don't like Joe Burrow's upside. I like Joe Burrow. If I can avoid playing this week, you might have to, but if you can avoid to, I would want to play Joe Burrow.
Oh, wouldn't want to play Joe Burrow.
That's a bold statement.
I don't know if I can't go as far as I don't want to play him. Now, if you want to say I don't,
I shouldn't say. I think there's better options. I should say. I guess that's what I should have said, because you're right. It's not a guy that I'm petrified to play, but it's a guy that I think there's actually way better options, such as like a Baker Mayfield, where it looks bad on paper, but I think will wind up being better fantasy wise.
I disagree with that. I don't think Baker's going to do it. I have him ranked way lower than Joe Burrow going up against Kansas City without having Mike Evans. But besides the fact of, does your opinion change if we know T. Higgins is going to play?
It doesn't. I mean, look, Cincinnati, if they play to win a game right now, their offensive line is not very good. The one thing the Raiders can do is generate some pressure with Max Crosby, and you can run the ball on the Raiders. I think that overall Cincinnati has been pretty content if they can move the ball simply, like the Giants game, for example. They're not going to necessarily go out to blow you out. And if Joe Burrow is not going to be stretching the field, he only had 6.3 yards the last 2 weeks, or 6.5 yards per attempt last 2 weeks. This isn't a guy that, necessarily looking to push the ball down the field all over and over again. So if they can sit there and kind of feed Mike Gesicki and T. Higgins once in a while, I think you get another 2-touchdown game maybe. But it's a guy that, like I said, a lot of other options this week that I like more.
Okay. That's fair enough. All right. So for my bust this week this breaks my heart because I have so many shares of this guy, but it's Jalen Waddle. I am not loving the idea that ESR has him ranked as wide receiver 22. He's not a must-play wide receiver 2. He's not a top 24 play, in my opinion. I do have him at wide receiver 31. So the fact is, Waddle's been kind of a boomer bust wide receiver 3 for a year and a half now. And that doesn't just include the Tua injury coming back this year. Even with Tua back, he hasn't been the guy. Like, he's been getting 4, 5, maybe 6 targets tops. That's been about it. He's not earning enough of a target share to be considered a wide receiver 2, even with Tua in there. It's been 15% with Tua in at quarterback. And the bigger issue here is that Tua's checking the ball down. It's Devon Achane who's taken over as the second pass catcher in that offense to Tyreek Hill, not Jalen Waddle. He's not throwing the ball downfield nearly as much. There's another element to this too. It's the matchup with the Bills. Okay. Waddle hasn't finished better than wide receiver 39 versus the Bills since 2022. Tua has been the biggest problem historically against the Bills because he has a career completion percentage of 61%, average of 199 yards, and a 7-10 touchdown to interception ratio. Tua sucks against Buffalo. And Waddle, who's not getting enough of target share, cannot benefit as a result to that. Maybe Tyreek Hill can. Maybe Devon Achane can. But not Jalen Waddle. So I have him as a boom or bust wide receiver 3. It only takes one play, so he's still in the mix. But he's not a must play for me this week. And with that, is going to wrap it up for the Operation Domination Show. I hope you guys all enjoyed the episode. We'll be back, of course, next week to preview Week 10 at 9:30 on our YouTube channel, Fantasy Football Advice Network. But I'll also be back tomorrow night to talk with Dr. Brian Scott with a big injury list for him at 8 p.m. You can find that live on social media at FF Advice Network. We will release the video and, of course, the podcast on Friday. And you can download Operation Domination wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure you give Adam and myself a follow, and we'll check Chris out next week. See you guys then, and good luck. Hey there, I want to thank you for watching Operation Domination today. And if you're enjoying the show, there are some ways you can help support us. You can go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination and leave us a 5-star review. And you can do this on any podcast platform or on our YouTube page when you go to @FF Advice Network. This completely helps out the show be able to grow, and also leave us comments to let us know how we can curtail the show to you, because you are the most important member of the show. So again, go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination to leave a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you listen or watch the show, and we'll help better serve you.